Dietrich pointed up to the tent flap.
The general will be here very soon. Let's go inside. Who takes over from Marcello? Asked Patch.
Dietrich sat down in one of the camper chairs and just looked at Patch as if his supper had just been laced with botulism. For some reason, Dietrich thought the remark humorous, and he smiled for the first time.
Last time I was in Cuba, I wasn't very clever. 59, no Batista, Havana, I was supposed to snoop. You don't ask cab drivers about how they felt about the United States attacking their island. I told them not to worry, that everything was coming to fruition. Guess what? Well, you know what happened. Batista leaving caused this whole situation, said Meinkewitz.
Dietrich wrote something in the wire-rimmed notebook.
It's government work, but too much corruption like all of Latin America. American Marines formed a ring around the tent. Patch smiled as a brown-haired man in full blue uniform entered under the flap. His little mustache moved up as he smiled at Meinkewitz. Ray, good afternoon. Glad to see you, General. General Hillsdale, this is Patch Kincaid. General. The general remained standing. Our unknown. Patch, what you and Ray will be doing is classified.
Dietrich held his pen in the air as he spoke.
As you are both aware of by now, an operation is underway for expatriated Cubans to reclaim their country from the Castro regime. I am responsible for the propaganda operations and the organization of a post-Castro government.
Dan Preston has told us you've included us in this operation.
We have a number of volunteers already on the ground, said the general, and more being dropped before we launch. We will all be looking for Castro, and we'll be looking to kill him.
Dietrich shook his head.
Our people have formulated a combination of sea and air. We're rolled back by high people in the administration. And the beachhead has been switched back to Bahia de Conchinos, the Bay of Pigs. It was a beach that came down from the jungle. A lot of mosquitoes. I'm not hopeful about this site. And one more reason to kill Castro from our resources on the ground. All things sounds risky, said Meinkewitz. It's time for Kennedy to realize he has to invade Cuba and get it over with. That's neither here nor there right now. Look, I've been working with Dr. Cyril Hammerstein in my safe house where you were, Patch, in Coconut Grove on ways to kill Castro. That safe house had too many people just coming and going, said Hillsdale. Hell, with all the Cubans coming and going at all hours of the night, Hammerstein said he thought it was a homosexual brothel. Patch and Meinkewitz both laughed. Even the general smiled.
Dan Preston stuck his head inside as Dietrich prepared to continue. Preston looked angry and had a furious tone in his voice.
Jesus Christ, this is incredible. They're playing with fire.
What's the matter, Dan? Asked Dietrich.
Carlos Marcello.
Dietrich raised his open right hand.
We know. Little Kennedy's tried to shut them all down. Marcello's attorney said deporting Marcello was cruel and uncivilized. I guess Marcello was deprived of counsel and couldn't even talk to his wife. Little Kennedy doesn't give a shit about that. Consistent campaign to shut them all down,
said Preston.
Piss them all off is what he's done,
added Dietrich. The general looked at Preston and then back at Dietrich.
It all started with the McClellan Committee. The hearings in the Senate. They had Marcello and a lot of them right there on national TV. And we have to cooperate with those guys,
said Preston.
Why? Asked Hillsdale. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Who knows? General, said one of his aides, you have a call from Washington. Excuse me. Trafficante wants the gambling rights in Havana,
added Dietrich. Meinkewitz then banged his fist on the table. What the hell does that tell you, Bob? We shouldn't be dealing with these SOBs.
Patch formed a vivid picture of Trafficante's suite at the Fontainebleau. I don't make those decisions.
Preston crossed his arms. Hillsdale re-entered the tent as Preston lit a cigarette.
You and Patch are going to Cuba. We will land you in an appropriate area once the invasion starts. We'll have more intel as we get closer. Hillsdale stepped in front of the group. As far as this incursion to Cuba, I think we should be tight with the exiles in Cuba, the middle-class professionals who opposed Batista but came to despise Mr. Castro. For the record, I'm greatly opposed to this invasion. Maybe Kennedy will take the bait. It's not going to foment a mass uprising against Castro. I feel the same about Vietnam. One must know his enemies. However, as a project leader, I will follow my orders. I've been informed, said Hillsdale, that Colonel Kincaid has been flown from Japan back to Washington because of this mess. His knowledge of the U-2 could be critical as we go forward. Kerbinsky, said Patch and Meinkewitz at the same time. Who's Kerbinsky?
Asked Dietrich.
A physicist, so it's not important.
Dietrich nodded and wrote in his notebook.
You two will be sent back to Miami, and then we'll pass the word when we're ready. Your mission is to kill Carlos Sánchez. Why do I think that certain people have a vested interest in that outcome? I'm an intelligence analyst and a physicist, not an assassin, said Meinkewitz. Ray, when the brigade breaks through and reaches Havana, we will locate Higgins. Your job will be to thoroughly debrief him if he hasn't been killed. What do you say? Meinkewitz looked directly into Patch's eyes. Well, that's different. Well, I'm not letting Patch go in alone. Hillsdale cleared his throat. The third individual will be with you for protection, and if he gets the opportunity, he will kill Castro.
Dietrich smiled and tilted his head back.
He and 50 others on the ground. Hotel Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, Miami, Florida, Wednesday, April 12, 1961, 2:17 p.m. This time, Meinkewitz and Patch arrived at the Hotel Fontainebleau in a small black limo, driven by a quiet little man called Noogie. Noogie's answers to Menkiewitz's matter-of-fact questions on the way across town to the safe house amounted to 6 no's and 5 yeses.
At the front lobby, Bill Pladen, white shirt open at the collar, wore brown pleated pants and smoked a cigarette about 25 feet inside the glass doors. When he noticed the limo stopped out front, he took 2 steps forward. Pladen, will he be coordinating sending us in? Asked Patch. Noogie opened the door. Maybe. Patch followed Meinkewitz out of the limo. Noogie said nothing and returned to the limo before the Fontainebleau doors opened. Pladen had already retreated to one of the support columns and had jettisoned the cigarette. Gentlemen, he said with a familiarity that had Patch thinking they trusted both him and Meinkewitz. Bill, you ready for Johnny? And his King's Men cologne? Pladen produced a hearty laugh. Oh, that stuff is brutal. Or maybe he just uses it too much, but Johnny likes it. If Johnny likes it, I like it, said Patch. Now you're learning, kid. We're heading upstairs. You'll be briefed for your mission, and you'll meet with Colonel Irwin and Rupert Montang. Are you ready? As ready as we'll ever be. We're ready. Well, my friend, tell me how the Russians know about the Cuban operation. Patch stopped and faced Pladen directly. You've had me starved, sleep-deprived, and tortured by that trumpet music at Coconut Grove. How would I know anything about the Russians? Well, there's been a breach of security as of last Sunday. If the Russians know, then Castro knows that something will happen. Meinkewitz stepped in. Bill, don't you think it's a bit far-fetched to be blaming Patch for your lack of security? Don't push me, Ray. I will push you, Bill. You people have had custody of Patch for almost a month and a half. You ought to start looking inside your own organization. Pladen said nothing as he escorted them into the elevator. The door slid open and Pladen stood back. Traitors. End up dead. Platinum doors closed and Patch turned to Meinkewitz. There are too many people running this operation, Ray. In and out of government.
2 men in smooth dark suits and thin black ties guarded the outside of the suite. The blue ocean caught his eye, but then Johnny Rosselli appeared, dressed in a navy pinstriped suit. He waited for them across the apricot wall-to-wall carpet. A wide smile enveloped his face as he extended his hand to Patch. Patch already sensed the King's Men in the air. Captain, I'm so glad to see you and Ray here this morning. Then he shook hands with Meinkewitz. My hat is off to you both. What you're going to do is nothing short of extraordinary. Rosselli patted Patch on the shoulder. He motioned them to the spacious drawing room. A bald man in a gray suit and red tie smoked a cigarette near the deck sliders in front of the ocean. The third man wore an army dress uniform. He stood at ease in front of the white brick fireplace. Ray Meinkewitz and Captain Kincaid, I want you to meet Colonel Irwin and Rupert Montang. Menkiewitz's formal manner broadened on humorous. Patch said he enjoyed meeting them, but he was increasingly apprehensive about these men being in charge of his mission to Cuba. This is an interesting beginning to a military mission, said Patch. Consider it a committee of perspective, said the ever-slick Rosselli. Patch raised his brow and looked Meinkewitz in the eye. I think Joe and Sam and all of us have the same goal, but for different reasons, said Montague with a ready smile. The colonel stayed in front of the fireplace. His voice filled the room. I think what Mr. Rosselli is saying cannot be understated. I originally, on behalf of individuals in the U.S. government, contacted Mr. Rosselli for certain services. He refused any compensation. Rosselli's deadpan serious face unnerved Patch. Last month we all met here at the Fontainebleau. My assistant and I provided certain items to issue the demise of Castro. My point in bringing you up here, said the colonel, is to demonstrate the weight of political, military, and intelligence power behind the pending invasion as well as your particular operation. My only thought is to get rid of Carlos Sánchez, said Patch. Understood, said the colonel. Keep in mind, if you get the opportunity to kill Castro, you'll be saving the lives of thousands who will die as long as he is alive. Patch envisioned New York City swallowed up in the nuclear holocaust. Certainly. So, we're going in before the actual invasion of Cuba, asked Meinkewitz. Correct, said the colonel. I can't tell you exactly where this moment. We're tracking Sanchez with a number of on-the-ground contacts. As you know, he expressed an interest in defecting to the United States also last month. We're not fooled by Castro's actions. His knowledge or rumors of the invasion has prompted him to place one of his most ruthless assassins, Sanchez, in the vicinity of the landing point. All I need is an M1, said Patch. You will be fully equipped, thanks to Rube Montaigne. Patch nodded at Montaigne, who had lit another cigarette. We have others involved in this operation, backups, said Rosselli, with the goal of killing either Castro or Sanchez. We had high-level people presenting this. Buford Adams approved of this mission because we added Castro to the component. I have a dumb question. What's that? Once we accomplish this mission, how the hell do we get out of there? Rosselli did not have an answer and looked toward the colonel. The colonel stepped forward for the first time. That information will be forwarded to a member of Intercept who will accompany you to Cuba. And who might that be? Asked Patch. I can't release that name right now. He will have maps and the mission plan, as well as the means to rendezvous with the brigade once they are sure. He will also have radio communications with our ground contacts, perhaps Sanchez himself. Sounds as if you've got this planned very well. This aspect of the invasion is planned well. I'm not so sure about the landing point and the coordination of the main thrust with the air attacks. That's right, said Meinkewitz. They did change the point of landing of this invasion. The colonel nodded. I won't say this isn't without risk. You'll be in the middle of a battle with both sides ready for victory. We understand that, said Patch. If anything happens to us, you'll have to kill Carlos. Rosselli crossed his arms. After your information, Patch, if we don't kill him, he'll get one of us for sure. You get rid of this bastard and you'll be set with us for life, believe me. Patch did not care about being all set for life. He cared about the terrorist who killed Meinkewitz in the future being stopped now. I want you to head down to the pool area. Find Jack LaRue. LaRue will pick it up from there. Patch nodded. We're good to go. Don't let me down, kid, said Rosselli, grabbing the back of his neck. And you get to reunite with your fiancée. Carlos Sánchez must die. Hotel Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, Miami, Florida, Wednesday, April 12, 1961, 4:05 p.m. Patch and Meinkewitz dodged the lounge chairs and the poolside tables along the curved blue concrete pool. At one of the sidebars closer to the beach, Jack LaRue and a few men sat on wood bar stools. They looked up at a black and white portable TV in the upper corner shelf above the liquor bottles. President Kennedy now engaged in yet another news conference. Patch identified even more with the younger Kennedy. LaRue held a Coke in his hand and he turned to the others. He talks a good game. He has to, said the crew cut guy next to him. We're talking about lives on the line here, Tony. This better be handled right.
Has a decision been reached on how far this country would be willing to go in helping an anti-Castro uprising or invasion in Cuba? What could you say with respect to recent developments as far as the anti-Castro movement in Cuba?
LaRue continued his touring. Got the Ruskies putting that guy in space. Yuri Gagarin, said Patch. How do you know that, Patch? Because it already happened. Meinkewitz gave him a quizzical look as LaRue saw them at the bar. Jack? Well, look what the cat dragged in. The captain and the professor. They told us to report to you. Hush! "Hush," said LaRue as he looked up again at Kennedy in his tailored suit with a white